The B-17G Mary Ellen rolled across the hardstand at Polebrook before dawn, its engines coughing to life in the darkness, like four tired beasts waking under protest. Her crew moved with ritual familiarity, Preston in the top turret checking hydraulic lines, Burke the navigator hurrying up the ladder with charts under his arm, Captain Lyle Harding taking the left seat and tapping the gauges like a man trying to coax truth out of instruments that preferred lies. But the last aboard was Sergeant Max Dixie Carter, the tail gunner, quiet, wiry, always watchful. He paused at the open hatch and stared at the shadows under the belly. Something about the ground crew having seemed off that morning. Something too quick, too nervous. He felt it in his gut, but he climbed aboard anyway. A B-17 didn't wait for feelings. The target was Regensburg again, and no one liked it. Heavy flak, veteran gunners and the Luftwaffe always seemed hungry there. Harding kept the briefing short. Get in, get out, stay tight. The men nodded, though their eyes told a different story. A few of them were flying on borrowed nerves. The Mary Ellen had taken damage nearly every mission for the last month, like the sky had singled her out. They lifted off into grey morning, the world dropping away until England was a quilt of hedgerows and frost. Dixie crawled aft to the tail as the bomber leveled out at altitude. He checked his guns, tested the triggers, ran a hand across the ammo belts, smooth, clean, perfect. But when he tapped the control cables for the tail, one of them gave a faint, irregular vibration. He frowned. That shouldn't happen. Pilot tail, he called over interphone. I've got something odd back here. Define odd, Harding replied. Feels like cable tension's been messed with. Bad? Not yet, but wrong. Harding exhaled. We'll keep an eye on it. They crossed the Dutch coast under fire, flak blossoms bursting around the formation in black puffs. The Mary Ellen shuddered through turbulence, and shrapnel pecked at her skin like hail. Dixie kept scanning the sky behind them, empty for now. But his attention kept drifting down to the control cables again. That vibration pulsed like a heartbeat, faint but deliberate. The Luftwaffe came at the German border, as expected. First 109s, then 190s, slashing through the high sun like razors. The squadron tightened up. The escorts dove in. Chaos rippled across the formation. Dixie fired short bursts at a passing 190, tracking it as it spiraled away, smoking. But the moment he clipped on his oxygen mask again, he felt the tail jerk, once then twice, like something had let go inside the fuselage. Then the tail dipped. Harding's voice snapped through the interphone. Tail, what was that? Something's wrong, trim's dropping, cable slack increasing. Dixie reached down and felt the tension line again. It was loose, not worn, not frayed cut. His blood ran cold. Someone had slashed the main control cable. Sabotage. Pilot, we've been tampered with, Dixie barked. This wasn't where. Someone cut the cable for the tail assembly. The cockpit erupted with curses. Can you compensate? Harding asked desperately. For a while, Dixie said. But if the secondary lets go, we lose the tail entirely. Jesus, Preston muttered. Somebody tried to kill us before the Germans even got a shot. Harding held the bomber steady as best he could, but the Germans were closing from behind, sensing weakness. The tail sagged lower, controls responding sluggishly. Dixie grabbed his repair kit, small, meant for patch jobs, not structural sabotage, and began crawling under the guns, contorting himself into the tightest corner of the airplane, where the secondary cable ran. The bomber shook violently as cannon shells tore past the tail. Dixie ignored them. He lay flat on his back, breath fogging the metal, hands trembling as he inspected the second cable. It had been partially cut, only a few strands still holding. If the Luftwaffe's fire hit this spot, if turbulence snapped it, if strain grew too high, the tail would shear off and the Mary Ellen would fall apart mid-air. Pilot, I'm making a fix, Dixie said, voice muffled. Keep her steady. Steady's a luxury today, Harding replied. Do what you can. Dixie pulled out pliers, wire, a small clamp. He braced himself awkwardly, feeling the bomber lurch as the formation tightened against more fighter attacks. Every jolt sent the cable quivering inches from his face. Sweat dripped off his chin, freezing the instant it touched cold metal. He wrapped wire around the damaged section, tightening it, reinforcing the strands. Another tremor, another burst of cannon fire streaking past the tail. The cable groaned. Come on, Dixie whispered. Hold for me, hold. A 109 made a pass directly at the tail, guns blazing. Tracers lit the sky. One round pierced the fuselage inches from Dixie's head. He flinched but didn't stop. His fingers worked faster, twisting, securing, locking the clamp. Then the cable snapped, or rather, it finished snapping. The last strands gave way with a sharp metallic ping that echoed like a death knell through the tail section. But the wire Dixie had wrapped held, barely. The sudden shift pulled the improvised fix taut, wrenching it forward and digging the clamp tight. The tail lurched but stayed attached. The Fortress survived by a prayer of wire and a stubborn sergeant. "Pilot," Dixie gasped, "you've got control again. But it's not perfect." Harding tested it. "It's better than before." "Good work, tail." "Don't thank me," Dixie said. "We're not out of this yet." They reached the target, released their bombs, and turned for home. The WW2s fell back as P-51 escorts arrived, Silver Angels diving through the flak. The B-17 limped westward, tail shaking with every gust. Dixie returned to his guns, though he kept glancing down at the improvised reinforcement that held their survival in place. Hours later, English coastline appeared through clouds, but the strain on the cable worsened with descent. Dixie felt it giving way, the metal starting to twist where it shouldn't. He radioed forward. "Pilot, the fix won't last landing. She'll break." "Understood," Harding said, voice calm but resigned. "Brace back there." The bomber lined up on the runway. The moment the wheels kissed concrete, the tail gave out. The improvised cable snapping, the repaired section flying apart, the tail dipping violently. Dixie was thrown against his harness as the Mary Ellen skidded, screeching metal against runway, sparks flying from beneath. The Fortress slewed sideways, engines roaring down to silence as the aircraft ground to a halt in a cloud of dust and smoke. Crew chiefs and medics sprinted toward the wreck. When they pried open the rear fuselage, they found Dixie still in his seat, bruised, dazed, but alive. He climbed out on shaking legs and looked back at the tail, the section hanging by nothing but torn rivets and sheer luck. "What happened back here?" the maintenance officer demanded. Dixie pointed at the cut cable. "Sabotage. Someone got to us on the ground." Investigators moved in, but the crew already knew. Someone on the base had tried to murder 10 Americans by making it look like an accident. They'd never know who. The saboteur vanished, transferred or disappeared into foggy wartime bureaucracy. But Dixie Carter, the quiet tail gunner, had stared death in the face inside the narrow metal coffin that was the B-17 tail and refused to let his ship die. His hands, raw and trembling, had kept the Fortress flying long enough to bring 10 men home. As the crew stood beside the battered Mary Ellen, Harding clapped Dixie on the shoulder. "You saved this aircraft," he said, "and you saved every one of us." Dixie only stared at the ruined tail, the broken cable swinging gently in the wind. "Nah," he murmured. "The girl saved us. I just helped her hold on. The Mary Ellen never flew again. But every man aboard her did, because a tail gunner refused to accept that sabotage. Not flak, not fighters, not fate would decide their last day in the sky."